Happy New Year to everybody. We are January 13th, session one, number one, hot topic Tuesday of the year. Um, we've got some interesting topics. And as I put it, it's about making your money, getting your money, keeping your money, because we've got a couple of scenarios that has popped up. So you see on my PowerPoint here, I have Twire, otherwise this week in real estate, only for this and other sessions I'm going to do. I'm going to call it these weeks in real estate because a number of things have come up that I think is worth sharing that will help all of you out. So let's kick it off and make this roll. Here we go. Here's a scenario. You've got a property that you've sold representing the buyer, and it's a cash deal. All things are clear on title. You're clear to close. You get your closing documents. And notice I put a big old but here. But you, as the agent, did not review the documents. And this is the part where I think there's some confusion. Your managing broker never received the closing documents, so they never reviewed them. Everybody got the scenario? So let's check one thing to make sure everybody catches a key part here. If we're on the buy side and it's a cash deal, how many title policies are issued?
One.
Just one. In AC, and Holly, you nailed it there. Uh, who's providing that?
The seller.
The seller. So the seller is providing an owner's policy of title insurance to the buyer. So how many title companies are involved? Just one. And if it's not our title company, it's not automatically sent to our managing broker. Okay. I think everybody knows where we're going with this, right? This is a key for us to make sure that we're all aware of. Now, I haven't managed, I don't know, it's been 6 months anyway. Uh, but we have to keep in mind, we always want to make sure that our manager has received the closing documents. Now, we as the agent know the transaction better than anybody else. We need to review our own closing statements, but we want to make sure that our managing broker gets them too. So you close, right? Celebration. We're going to get paid. Reading it. So it actually said, thank you, Holly. That's a great way of putting it. Um, the title company, we're going to say, did their job. But the title company didn't do their job in full. Lydia, thank you. Um, so, guys, it when we do these sessions where it's this week in real estate, typically it is because somebody has experienced this. And they're saying, please share it because I don't want this to happen to anybody else. So, as you can see from the scenario, it was on the purchase agreement. Seller to pay 2.5%, buyer to pay 0.5%. It's on the purchase agreement. Title company goes through, prepares all the documents, only the 2.5% from the seller. The 0.5% from the buyer was not on it. Whose fault? Well, I can share with you in the end. And when I shared with the agent, I said, guess what? Most likely is going to happen is unless if we go after it from our buyer, we're not going to collect it. And the title company is not going to pay because they didn't collect. They drafted the documents based on broker direction. Yet we didn't approve of them and we didn't look at them until after the closing. So in the end, either we go after the 0.5% from our buyer, which rightfully we could do, or we could look at our scenario and go, not going to do that. And we'll call that a good business decision because we were going to make more money off of this buyer. So why piss them off, pardon me for being blunt, after you've closed on it? Because you're going to get paid on another transaction. All right. So what's the message, guys? Make sure, Leanne, I think you just lipped it correctly.
Always review your documents.
And I know there's Sherry going, yeah, Sherry's going, and make sure I get them so I can get them to the manager, right? So, guys, those are the two key things that I want you to take away from this first scenario. All right. What questions do you have from this one? Everybody's good. All right, here we go.
I want to say
Oh,
something.
yes.
I just want, I now realize because I just assumed, and you know what happens when you assume, that the brokers always got a copy. I never even imagined that I would have to send a copy to the broker. Afterthought, like, what, duh? Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is good. Yeah.
Yeah. And so Lydia, thank you for allowing me to share this and sharing. Because Lydia, you've been in the business for how long?
Long time.
A long time.
You
I
were
mean,
one of
like,
my first teachers.
I was just going to throw that out. And guys, I've been teaching within, geez, it started I actually in 92. So I think you and I were together in 93 when we first got that. So anyway, it's just we need to know it's not a guarantee that your manager is going to see it. And Lydia, again, just a great scenario where, she did all of the right things, but didn't know this one. So always check to make sure that your manager is on those that email when you receive your closing documents. And oh, by the way, make sure that we get the closing documents. Okay. Um, can you collect compensation without a contract signed by the buyer? I think you might already saw it. Holly, good to see you again. That's pretty cool. Love to see you guys again. I think we all know this. And the answer is no. It's just one of those that I want to make sure that we're reminded because believe it or not, I still hear those scenarios where we're not getting a signed contract or we've collected more than we're supposed to. Because on the buyer side, yeah, Holly, great question for throwing that one out. So as you see in the chat, Holly just threw out there, what if the seller is willing to pay more? Well, here's the issue you've got, guys. Who's the contract with to pay you?
The buyer.
It's with the buyer. Now, if you said 2.5%, let's just say 2.5%. What does the buyer contract say about receiving credit? Any amount received from a listing broker, seller, blah, 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 will be credited toward this amount. So if the seller is willing to pay 3, you have a contract that says 2.5. Well, you received 0.5% too much. And I don't know if you've thought about how credit works, but if I owe you 2.5 and we got 3, that's my money,
Mhm.
right? There's 0.5% over. But the settlement says you can't keep that. It's their money. But now you got to deal, if there's financing, a mortgage company. Would the mortgage company allow that, or might they make you switch that to concessions? Just one to keep in mind. Okay. Let me just see if there's anything else I have not missed. Yeah.
Darwin, I got a question.
Go ahead, AC.
Uh, I wouldn't do this, but I've heard that if you put 2.5 on the contract and they're willing to get 3, I wouldn't do it, but people have said you could re-sign the agreement to match the 3, which I wouldn't do it, but I would start high initially and then
Come
go
down.
right.
Yeah, because then you're a good guy.
Okay.
Yeah, I absolutely think that's the way of being able to do it. So can we do a 2.5 and then, gee, the seller's willing to pay 3 and have them sign a new contract? Yeah, it's just like, why would a buyer do that? And oh, by the way, they have. I just don't understand it.
I think it's a can of worms.
Yeah, yeah. It's like, look, let's save you that additional amount of money because it is theirs. All right. Good question. And I was thinking it popped something else into my head, but it popped right back out. So here we go. I'm going to lead somewhere now with this scenario. So we're going to talk about earnest money. I want to go through these quickly. The extent of damages that it talks about is frequently challenging to demonstrate. Therefore, the earnest money deposit sets a baseline damage amount. Now, we're talking earnest money, yet it's talking damage. So, some purchase agreements provide that in the event of, by the way, not damages to the house. Okay, we're not talking a damage deposit, but we've got to clear the myth that if I decide not to buy it, the worst case scenario, it costs me my earnest money deposit. It says may cost you your earnest money deposit and other liquidated damages. So that's what we're talking about when we see damages. Um, so other purchase agreements provide that sellers are entitled to the EMD and actual damages. But the EMD kind of sets the baseline for what the damages could be because, if you will, it's good faith money. That's the whole purpose. It's showing their sincerity in moving forward to closing. Once a real estate broker has an EMD check in hand, we know that the broker must deposit it or deliver it to the escrow agent within 2 banking days. Now, that's the brokerage, not you. As an agent, we know that we have to get that to the broker, our broker, or the escrowee immediately, is the way that it is termed by law. The buyer and seller wish to agree that the EMD will be deposited to some future date, which our purchase agreement is written this way. And I don't recommend it, but after waiver of the inspection contingency, then the purchase agreement must provide that buyer will not deliver the check to the broker's office. We've got that set up, but I want you to know it's okay for us to do what it is that we're doing when we set the purchase agreement up to receive it at a future time. It's just once it's received, then we've got the 48 hours, and you as an agent must turn it in immediately, is the term that is used. If the buyer agrees to deliver the check at some future point, then the buyer's offer should make clear that when that check is to be delivered. We got all that covered. When the purchase agreement calls for the MD to be delivered at some point in the future, the broker should have procedures in place to make sure that the check is delivered as required. So when I said I don't really like the aspect, I used it as an example, but I don't like that we have a far off future collection of an earnest money deposit, because we're doing 7 to 10 days typically for an inspection contingency. 10 days out or later, you are to remember to collect an earnest money deposit. Do you have the systems in place that will remind you to collect that? I always said that I don't like it because agents will forget. I've seen and reviewed the files where it was really simple. Well, no problem, we didn't collect it. Let's just remove it from the purchase agreement by doing an addendum that states earnest money deposit will be $0. Very doable. It is doable. You can do that. Now, here's the problem. What if it doesn't close and you never collected it? Or you sign that addendum and then you don't close. But the worst case scenario, you have no addendum. The buyer decides not to close for any reason that the purchase agreement will allow, and there's no earnest money deposit. You think the seller's going to say, well, that buyer is in default. I want the earnest money. But we don't have it. Who's going to pay the earnest money deposit if you never can collect it from the buyer? You know the answer to that way. Thank you, Marjorie. Yep, point right at yourself, guys. The broker, we, the company, we're not the ones that didn't collect it, right? So we've got to do this. It's going to be us because we have the ultimate responsibility to collect that earnest money deposit. So if the seller delivers that EMD, discovers the EMD was never collected from the buyer, and the seller believes that they are entitled to the EMD after a failed transaction, the seller may pursue the realtor who failed to collect the EMD or failed to advise the seller, because this is the other part. If we collect one and the check bounces, advise the seller. Now, we're still going to go and collect the earnest money deposit. But what if that second check pops and just goes bouncing down the road? Advise the seller. I would suggest that you do so both in writing and with a verbal communication. You want a track record that says you communicated this. Under Michigan Occupational Code, if the EMD is in a broker's trust account, and if there is a dispute over the EMD, the broker cannot release the EMD. This is a clear reminder again. Some of you, this will be new, but you need to know. If there is a dispute, we cannot release it. If it's with another broker, they cannot release it. If it's with an escrowee like a title company, they cannot release it. What if there is no dispute? We cannot hold it. If there is no dispute, we cannot hold it. Well, how do we know if there is a dispute? Either somebody's clearly already told us that we have a claim to it, or we have a mutual release. Then we know there is no dispute. What if the seller simply hasn't signed it, but hasn't said, we want the EMD? Well, that's when you're going to get with your admin and your managing broker, and we're probably going to send a certified letter to the seller stating that if you do not respond to this letter that you're disputing, we will be releasing this too. We give them a couple of days. Now we've got verification. There was no dispute. We released the earnest money deposit. Anywhere in here, let me know if you got questions.
Darwin, I got a question.
Yeah, go for it,
Uh,
bud.
uh, do you think there's a difference in whether the listing broker holds the EMD or a third party title company? Is there like a more of authority? Because sometimes if a broker, you know, there's been shady brokers who have released money, and when they don't follow the rules because they don't care, they're like, sue me. And who's going to sue for no, even under five
Yes.
grand? No one's going to sue.
Yeah.
So,
It's like, is it worth, the risk versus reward, the financial gain versus the financial cost? So, yeah, that's something that everybody has to worry about. And you brought up another great point. Make sure it's a large amount, a sizable amount. Make it worth not leaving a contract, is the way I put it. I think 1% is a minimum. The days of $500 and $1,000 earnest money deposits should be a thing of the past.
wow, okay.
Yeah. I suggest starting with 1%,
Hmm.
as much as 3%. Why? I don't have to worry about an overage, right? If I have more than I'm collecting for the company compensation, I've got to deal with an overage. Not that that's a big deal. Look, if I've got a cash deal, um, give me a sizable earnest money deposit that may exceed my compensation because I really want them to see I want to buy the house. It's going to make it easier the larger the earnest money deposit because it's showing good faith to close the deal. So, bottom line, if we take it, I really prefer that we hold it because then we do have that control. Um, Builders, I'm okay with builders holding it. Um, and whoever does it has got the risk. And if there's any place where we're going to get in trouble, get fined by the state of Michigan, it's dealing with earnest money deposits. So the occupational code only requires written release if the broker is aware that there is a dispute over who is entitled. And again, I kind of gave the procedure for us to find out whether or not there is a dispute. We already talked about that. And I've already given you this. We are a brokerage that when we hold the earnest money deposit, and this is a key part to the clarification, when we hold it and we are going to release it, most of you know we need the buyer, the seller, and the listing broker because we want to make sure that they're not laying any claim to the earnest money deposit either. And obviously, if we have trouble getting that, talk and bring in your managing broker. Okay. That is our way of making sure that we have full release and we can't hold it forever because the buyer and the seller have agreed to release it. Yeah, I will cover this. If a buyer says, I'm not buying it. And there's a dispute over the earnest money deposit, and there's no mutual release. It does not tie the seller from selling the house. When you have it, talk with your managing broker and decide that you have enough to be able to say, yes, seller, you can go ahead and put it back on the market and sell it. But involve your managing broker so that we've got ourselves covered, because we don't want this buyer to come back out of the woodwork and go, oh, no, I still want to buy it. We're going to have certain things to make sure that we can put it back to the market. Obviously, legal counsel. So here's a scenario then. Buyers has an offer and it is accepted. Buyer applies and are denied. Seller says, I really want you to do this. I'll tell you what, I'll extend the contract, but you need to apply through mortgage company X. They sign an addendum extending it out. They apply to this other mortgage company, pay here $600, $700 for another appraisal, only to be denied for the same exact reason that they were denied on the first mortgage application. Seller refuses to sign the mutual release and claims that the earnest money deposit is theirs because the buyer defaulted. Everybody good to the scenario so far? The seller extended the closing date, and this is the interesting part, but did not sign extending the financing contingency. Now, this is why this one's so good. How many of us need to an extension of the closing date, but we never extend the time period to be able to get mortgage commitment?
I've never heard of that before.
Yeah, hey, I was going to say thank you, AC, because I can't be the only one who's done it.
And I've done mortgages on the purchase side. I've never even thought about that. Is that a big deal?
We don't know yet.
Wow.
I can tell you, it's what this seller and a seller's attorney has laid out. They're going, well, you're in violation. You're in breach of contract because you didn't get your commitment. Well, that's what they're claiming. Point is, here's learning lesson from first one from this scenario. Maybe we should extend not just a closing date when the closing date needs to be extended because we haven't got mortgage commitment. Maybe we should be extending the mortgage commitment and the close by date.
Wouldn't it be just easier to just write up a whole new contract?
Maybe, but literally it would just be an addendum that says, as per paragraph, what is it, 5 now? Mortgage commitment to be received by, closing date to happen within. So it would be that simple addendum. So I guess, Holly, I would probably say, yeah, just the addendum still. There's always risk to writing up a brand new contract. Not always there's times when it should be done, but we weigh all the risk in between the two. But again, that's what this attorney looked at and said, well, yeah, no, we only extended the closing date. We didn't extend your financing contingency. But here's another one. And oh man, I hope you pick up on this. An addendum within all of this was proposed by the mortgage originator with the following statement. So, AC, you can definitely appreciate this. The mortgage originator trying to get this through, and I won't go into the details, but put this as part of an addendum. This addendum is a private agreement between the buyer and seller and is not intended for disclosure to or submission with any lender documentation. I don't know if I can do, let's pretend I had this proposed addendum right here. I get it just right. Okay. Let's say the buyer and seller executed this. And then we look around and we just put this under the table so that nobody knows about it.
You can't do that.
Say it again, AC.
You can't do that, especially towards the lender.
Wait, wait. The seller recommended this lender.
Uh-huh.
So what?
I mean, I would think that this would null and void any like because it says
Well,
with any lender documentation.
yeah, Holly, you're picking up on it. AC, you picked up on it. Guys, when they're saying that, hey, you can't tell anybody about it, especially the lender. I wish I had a red flag that I could be waving up at my head here.
That could be fraud.
Bingo. That is what I wanted you to catch. It's mortgage fraud. When you hide anything from the lender, when the lender is telling you, I just don't want to see it, red flag should start waving in front of your eyes. Mortgage fraud. This was actually suggested in this scenario. And I wanted to give it to you because I don't think it's yet necessarily settled. Whether or not this seller proceeded to file to take the earnest money deposit, and it's not necessary for us to know. What's necessary for us to know is what put us in the scenario in the first place. Then it would just happen to be this other part that brought up another learning lesson. But let me give you the common one. Has anybody heard of a personal property sheet or a personal property addendum? Yes, we have. Probably most of us all have seen them. I'm okay with it. And hear me out on all the way through this. And then I'll tell you why I'm saying all the things I'm saying. The personal property went on a addendum. If it is referred to, if the addendum, personal property sheet is referred to on the purchase agreement, I have absolutely no issue with it at all. Don't understand why we just wouldn't put it on our purchase agreement. That's why we have that blank section at the end. Not to mention, we have all the appliances, and that's typically where we put that under all of the things that are already boilerplate on there. And we put existing stove, refrigerator, washer, dryer. But when we get it from other companies, have they referred to the personal property sheet on the purchase agreement? If they haven't, it would force a counter and you having to simply state, see also personal property addendum made part of this purchase agreement. Okay? Now, here's the reason it should be referred to, or personal property should just be on the addendum. I'm going to take the example of a $20,000 garden tractor or yard tractor, not garden tractor. Let's go big. $20,000 garden tractor on a 5-acre property. Everybody with me on a scenario? We try to negotiate personal property as part of a real estate transaction. Not a good idea. You turn everything in because you've done everything properly. And the mortgage originator says, hey, I need you to remove that from the purchase agreement. The underwriter will not allow it. You write up your addendum. It says, garden tractor not to be included. It is removed from this transaction. And then the loan originator says, put it on another addendum. I just don't want to see it.
Same thing, same thing.
Removed it, put it here. And we hide it under the table and not tell anybody about it. And you get to the closing, and one of the final documents that they sign says something to the nature that you have signed all these documents to the best of your ability, truthful, da 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 da, and that you have no other side agreements outside of. Well, you had one under the table, and you've now committed mortgage fraud. And your buyers and sellers didn't even know that that's what they did.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
What happens if the addendum says that the tractor is a personal property and it's between the seller and the buyer, the purchase of that?
How much did put it on?
Let's say 15,000.
So they owe $15,000 outside of the transaction. So they're going to pay $15,000 more than what they originally offered on the property because they were getting a garden tractor. So they're not going to do that. What they would do is they go, well, if I can't get the garden tractor, then I want to reduce it by $15,000. Okay. Which would, by the way, garden tractor be removed, purchase price to be. That would be the proper way to be able to do it. And then they can deal with the garden tractor all on their own because they've agreed to sell it for $15,000. That's outside the transaction now. But if they want to keep it and they do this, let's say the transaction was $515,000 with the garden tractor. And then you remove the garden tractor and you're going to keep it at $515,000, and then you try to write up some type of addendum that says, I get to buy it for $1. Is a seller going to do that just saying that? Yep, thank you, Holly. I love that emoji. Not going to happen. So then you got to go that, well, I'll sell it to you upon the closing of this property with such and such buyer. Whoops. Now it's tied back to the transaction again. I've never found a way of doing it.
Darwin,
Yes, Cindy.
I in the past, it has been a long time, so I have had a loan officer say, leave it on there, but say there's no value in that tractor. Is that no longer a way of doing that?
No, that's perfect. In matter of fact, you'll even see that when we get, like if you go into the clause libraries in Transaction Desk in SkySlope, you're going to see that there's a very simple clause for unusual personal property. It is out of the ordinary that a mortgage company will say, hey, you can leave it on there, but add this additional verbiage of being left at convenience of the seller and holds no monetary value. Most of them won't buy into that on a large value personal property, I'm going to say. If they do, that is absolutely fine. The normal unusual personal property that gets left behind at the convenience of the seller and holds no monetary value. Gun safes, pool tables, pianos, large bulky items that people don't want to move. And therefore, that's where the verbiage is important, that it's being left behind at the convenience of the seller and holds no monetary value. Mortgage companies typically will buy into those types of items. Now, a dock is another one. Portable dock, that's another one that they'll do. A boat, nope, not likely going to do it. If you have, however, a rental property, you have a different type of mortgage. And they may allow all existing personal property to remain. But it's a different type of loan at that point. So that's something else to take into consideration. All
Such
right.
as like a vacation home then also.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
I do have one other question. Where you had stated on the previous one, at first I didn't want to bug you, but now our Grand Rapids forms do not have a financial contingency date. All we have is a date they're supposed to put their application in by. Do you suggest to have one in there or add one? I don't know
I'm
if Lansing has a
yeah, it's
date that they're supposed financing's supposed to be done.
so I'm going to say probably you're fine, Cindy, if that is a board document.
It is.
And what they're doing is they're putting everything into that one date versus having a mortgage commitment by, well, apply by, mortgage by, or mortgage commitment by, close by. They're going, well, you got to apply by and you're going to close by, which means you better have your mortgage commitment. And most of the time, we don't always hit that mortgage commitment anyway. It's really the close by date. So yours might be a better purchase agreement, but I have not seen it. But I'm going to assume if it's a board document, it's been reviewed by legal, it should be fine.
Hey, thank you. I didn't want to
Yeah.
bug you because I'm probably the only Grand Rapids one on here, but I thought I'd ask.
Well, listen, and you're the best Grand Rapids agent we have. Let's see. What else do we have here? Hey, that's all I got for you guys. Um, I do have, how many of you have heard of the FinCEN? You been seeing that? Financial I enforcement something something something. It's coming. And so that we need to know about what FinCEN is, and you'll see it as capital FIN, capital C, capital E, capital N. We've got that coming up in February. Just so that you know, John Bomarito from ATA Title is their specialist on this. You haven't seen a whole lot about it. Boards are trying to get some education out there, but there's not a whole lot that's known as to what and how that's going to affect us. But basically, it's just at this point, we can say they're trying to figure out ways to be able to continue to make sure that people can't screw the taxpayer. I don't know if there's a better way to put that, but that's what the federal government is moving just further on, trying to prevent mortgage through real estate transaction, mortgage fraud through real estate transactions, or laundering money through real estate transactions. So that'll be coming up. Any other things that you've got, please let me know. I have a lot more of these weeks in real estate that I'm going to be bringing. So at this point, we're going to count on that for next week also. If you've got things that you've run into that would be a great share, man, hey, I'd love it if you can even present what's happened. That's, boy, to hear it straight from the horse's mouth is a great way to be able to learn and land what the experience is. So I'll just ask, what other questions might you have, y'all? Well,
Anything?
what's that?
Any question?
Any question?
Are we officially part of
Hey, we're still
Compass?
part of it if you want to bring it.
We're still we're part of a new name, right?
Oh, yes.
Technically
Yeah, well, not a I think at this point it's still just gosh, is
going
anybody
through the process.
yeah, we've just officially done the merger with Compass. And to my knowledge, they haven't changed anything with Compass anywhere. I hadn't heard it as a new name. AC, but it did finalize and all is signed, and Compass and Anywhere are together.
Okay.
Nothing on the immediate change, but we do see lots of benefits that should come because of the merger, without doubt. Well, gang, if that's it, I am going to say happy Tuesday. Go out. You know what to do. Talk to lots of people, set those appointments. Let's kick off a great 2026. See you soon.